Hello, I'm Linda Ann Smith, a member of Creative Arts Collaboration. The theme for this month is #ThinkPinkArt, and it comes in October in connection with Breast Cancer Awareness Month. I'm impatient about waiting on events and appointments, so when I have downtime, I pop out my sketchbook. In anticipation of this upcoming event, I did a lot of sketches about breast cancer awareness. I'm going to be experimenting with a couple of new things today. I don't know how this book will take watercolor, but I'll find out. And I also have a new watercolor water brush. I'll be working with these twinkling H2Os. This is the Think Pink set from colorart.com. And this is the sketch done in permanent ink that I'll be painting today. These twinkling H2Os have mica in them, so they're shimmery paints, perfect for a hummingbird. This should be a pretty simple painting to do to get used to this new brush. I'm using Luv-U-Pink here. There's 4 pinkish colors and 2 greenish colors in the Luv-U-Pink set from ColorArt. Let's see how well I manipulate this brush. It's working pretty well because it has a wide area and then you can turn it sideways for a narrow area. But I'll admit I keep trying to dip it into water instead of squeezing for water. For that reason, I think I'm going to go back to a traditional brush with a good point on it until I can play with the water-filled brush on scrap paper more. You know, this water brush might work well to wet the bird down. I'm going to try that and then go back to my traditional brush. Because for the bird, I'm going to try doing wet in wet with all the pinkish colors in the twinkling H2Os. And here I am with my traditional brush again. This is such a pretty color, and it just sparkles. Switching to the Hopeful Honeysuckle color to lay in the wash for the tail. These may look the same now, but when they dry, I think you'll see the difference in the colors. They're very slight because they're all pinkish colors, but very beautiful. And now I'm using the Dreams Bloom to do a little shading on the tail, working all this wet into wet. And I'll try my water brush here to blend these thick colors of paint that I'm putting into the tail, because I don't want them to fill the tail, I just want to blend them softly in. And that's working pretty well for me. I may get used to this one yet. I'll try a really thick watercolor in the Courageous again up here on the body. Let me dip into that. There we go, thick paint. And then I'm going to try blending it with my water brush. It's all what you get used to, I think. And this is beginning to work. See all this blank space to the right of the ribbon? I'm going to wet this area down really well with the brush that I'm used to using. And I'm going to do a wet into wet process to suggest foliage. Now, I don't want to actually create the foliage, I just want to make a suggestion. So wet into wet will give me a fuzzy, blended effect. If you want crisp edges on something, you paint on dry paper. If you want blended, fuzzy effects, then you're going to paint wet watercolor into wet watercolor or into water itself. This Lucky Apple color is going on real nicely, and I'm going to get it right up to the edges of the ribbon. I've always liked the color combinations of pinks and greens together. I think that's very feminine. This Good News color might look a little harsh when I first drop it in, but what you can do is if it's not spreading, you can spread it with, you can add extra water to the top of it and make it spread, or spritz some water on it, add some more color. You can push it with the brush a little bit. There's no real control of exactly where it goes when you're painting wet into wet. But you'll enjoy doing watercolor more if you give up trying to be in control of every little detail and let the watercolor flow and do its own thing. Not all of the feathers are dry yet on the hummingbird, so I'm being very careful to only go in places where it's dry because I do not want the green to come up onto the hummingbird. Let me go to the center of this ribbon now, and I'll wet it in just like I did outside of the ribbon. I can't really work on the other side of the hummingbird yet because the tail feathers are still wet. I'll let them dry before I work. I've put in most of the background now. I'm just touching up. I really tested this book because I got the paper awfully wet, more wet than I expected to. And it did do some curling, but there's a way to take that out. I can try it first, just closing it and weighting it down and making it flat. But also, sometimes if you dampen the back of your watercolor paper or iron the back, that will straighten out the paper too. It's not a terrible ripple in it, but it's enough that I don't want it there. I'm adding another layer to the wings to make them a little brighter and a little more defined, and I'm just kind of mixing all the pinkish colors up from this set. I'm using the Hopeful Honeysuckle, the Courageous, and the Dreams Blossom, or I'm sorry, the Dreams Bloom for the wings, and then that little tip on the wings up next to the breast, where the breast and the wings connect. I went back in with the same color I had on my ribbon, which is Luv-U-Pink. And I'm taking the Luv-U-Pink and making another layer now on top of what I've got to give this ribbon just a tiny bit of perspective so that it'll show that one tail of the ribbon is behind the other. I'm thinking that with all the wet reflections, it's kind of hard to tell what this really looks like, and so when it dries, I'll try to get a much better picture. Here it is all finished, and I'm fairly proud of it, but you can see at the left edge the crumpled paper that I'm going to have to straighten out. If you enjoyed this video, I'd appreciate a thumbs up, and of course I'd love it if you subscribed or shared it with your friends on any of your social media. If you'd like to find other Creative Arts Collaboration members who are doing the hashtag Think Pink Art event, go to your YouTube search bar and type in hashtag Think Pink Art. Think Pink Art. Oh my goodness.